Today we're going to talk about the number one way to cheat a drug test. Hi, my name is Mike and I'm with Health Research Systems. We've been in the drug testing industry for over 29 years and we're doing these short videos so employers can utilize them in a daily safety meeting or for training employees and supervisors about the company's drug-free workplace policy. And this is the next video in our training series, and today we're going to talk about dilute specimens. Drug tests are a part of most new job opportunities, especially DOT or safety-sensitive jobs. Prospective new hires know it's coming, and current employees are aware that random drug tests are a possibility every day. So if an employer applicant is concerned about testing positive, they might try to cheat the test. There are several ways people attempt to get away with cheating a drug test, most of which simply don't work. But the number one way employees try to hide drug use, and the one method they might get away with, is diluting their urine or water loading so that the sample comes out negative or clean, and is commonly called a negative dilute. As a DOT employer, you may accept a negative dilute test result under some circumstances as a negative test, and if you want to retest, you can do that too. However, you need to state it in your company policy, and then you must require a retest of all individuals that have a negative dilute result in that same testing category. Consistency in policy application is a must and the most frequent way that employers get themselves into litigation problems. Remember, the DOT rules do not require a company to hire anybody. That decision is entirely up to the employer, while Part 40.197B authorizes an employer to obtain one additional test following a negative dilute result in a pre-employment or other testing situation. A negative dilute test result is a valid negative test for DOT purposes unless it falls under Subpart B1 and the MRO directs you to recollect under direct observation protocol as the specimen creatinine was greater than 2 milligrams per dialiter and less than 5 milligrams per dialiter. Anything less than 2 would be considered a substituted specimen and would be handled differently. So in our scenario, a negative dilute test result is a negative test for DOT program purposes, and the employer is authorized to have the applicant begin performing safety-sensitive functions. If the company declines to hire the applicant in this situation, the employer's decision is based solely on its own policy. The company cannot claim that its action is required by DOT rules. So what's the cause of a dilute drug test? If an employee provides a urine specimen for a drug test and that specimen comes back with a dilute result, it means that the person drank too much water prior to the test and literally diluted their urine. It could also mean they physically poured water into their urine sample before turning it in. While this latter scenario pretty much confirms that the person tried to cheat their drug test, it's worth noting that in the case of the former scenario, a urine sample could come up dilute simply because that person drinks a lot of water in general, and their urine is diluted for that reason. Tests for specimen validity, which in this case would be creatinine and specific gravity, are run on the urine samples by the lab, and that enables them to verify the sample as characteristic of human urine. Why? Dilute drug tests are a problem because it makes it harder to determine if that person is using illegal substances. There are two types of dilute drug tests. A positive dilute always means that you tested positive for an illegal substance, regardless of it being diluted. Despite the amount of water in the urine, the test still picked up on some kind of illegal drug and again is still a positive test. A negative dilute, however, it's a different story, and it could mean one of two things. It could come back negative either because there truthfully are no illegal substances in the person's system, or because their urine was too dilute for the test to pick up on any. In other words, that person successfully cheated their drug test. Oftentimes, when an employer sees a negative dilute drug test result and their policy allows it, they'll send the employee back for another test. As an employer, note that a negative dilute test should not be considered grounds for rejecting an applicant or firing an employee. The only real conclusion you can draw from a negative dilute test is that you need to perform a second test in order to get a valid result. Similarly, an applicant or employee who provides a negative dilute specimen should not panic about being accused of doing drugs, unless, of course, you're doing drugs, in which case, feel free to panic. So how much water causes the dilute drug test? Science hasn't named one specific number or a precise amount of water that you got to consume that will end up as a dilute sample, but it's easy enough for an employee to figure out simply based on the color of their urine. The goal for them will be to get their urine as clear as possible, which is a sign that they're very hydrated and their urine is diluted. Just think about what your urine looks like when you first wake up in the morning. Having gone all night with no water, it's typically very dark in color, and that's because it's very undiluted. If you drink even close to the amount of water that your body needs throughout the day, it will never look the way it does in the morning. So to dilute urine, you have to go in the opposite direction and drink an excessive amount of water in a short span of time. The amount of water that will create an undiluted sample likely varies from person to person. It might be a half a gallon for one and a full gallon for another, but the rule of thumb for anyone trying to dilute urine is simple. Don't stop chugging until your urine is clear. So how do you avoid diluted urine? If you're an employer, while you can send someone back for a second test if the first test comes up negative dilute, you obviously can't control what an applicant or employee does in the day or hours leading up to their drug test. The most obvious piece of advice is to not drink large amounts of water leading up to a drug test. You really don't need more than, say, one full glass. In fact, it's best to provide your sample first thing in the morning before you've gone to the bathroom for the first time, so you're using the urine that was sitting in your bladder all night. But if you just can't hold it that long, and this option really isn't feasible, then you should aim to empty your bladder a couple of hours before providing a specimen, taking care not to drink too much in the hours before your test. Additionally, you should avoid all diuretics until after you finish providing a urine sample. Diuretics are any substance that promotes urination. They don't only come in the form of over-the-counter pills, but include things like green tea, black tea, parsley, coffee. So you might want to hold off on your daily Starbucks, until later in the day. It's important to remember that you don't need to be totally dehydrated and dying of thirst to avoid providing diluted urine. You can still drink water, just limit it to only the amount you need to remain hydrated enough before your test. Employee drug testing can get complicated sometimes, but we're here to make it easier. So that's our training for today, and this is Mike with Health Research Systems, and we offer national drug testing programs and background checks to companies of all sizes. If you have any questions, you can email us at info@healthresearchsystems.com. Hit the like and subscribe button for us so you'll know when we release the next video in this training series, and thanks for watching.